Okay, thank you, Griffin, for the introduction. And you see, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. And you can see here the table of contents of this speech, where there is a first part where we explain what is MOVENS, and that is the name of our technological platform, and Tommaso explaining what is Wefox. And then we enter in the specific case studies where I will speak about them by a tech point of view, while Tommaso will speak about a market point of view. First, a quick introduction about MOBI, because maybe that some of the participants are not MOBI members. And so MOBI is a global no-profit alliance involving companies, NGO and financial institutions, technological companies, and also regulators, in order to build the new economy of movement. But to build the new economy of movement, creating the standards and the infrastructure for all the connected ecosystems and IoT-based business. MOBI is completely agnostic about vendor and technology, and all the concept of MOBI, all the standards of MOBI, all the guidelines of MOBI are the basement of what we are doing. And it is very important also to mention what standards have been already developed inside of MOBI, together with all the MOBI members. And for instance, the battery identification number, the battery state of health, electric vehicle grid integration, and so on. A lot of standards and a lot of new standards are coming that are the basement of the new technological systems. So thank you to MOBI to host these lectures. And so I start with the first part explaining what is MOVENS. So the background of MOVENS is that we are in a world where, by a technological point of view, we are going towards a convergence, an integration between different technological platforms. But this integration between different technological platforms, this process, due mainly to the disaster we are having by a climate point of view, is currently going very, very strong towards a convergence on the energy assets. When we talk in theory by a convergence on an energy asset, I explain a simple concept. This is only one example, but for instance, batteries are the core of the new mobility, electric mobility, so are the new core of vehicles, but they are also the new core of all the energy infrastructure, because due to the mandatory increase in the numbers of renewable sources of energy, you are able to maintain the grid balancing, the energy grid balancing, only using batteries. So the batteries, storage systems, energy storage systems, are the core of mobility, and they are the core of energy. But not only by an hardware point of view, but also by a software point of view. And the role of batteries in the energy field is managed by the same technology that manages batteries inside electric vehicles. When we speak, for instance, about the new standard, the so-called the vehicle-to-grid standard, vehicle-to-grid really is a battery-to-grid. So this technology, the same technology we use to manage batteries, communication of batteries inside of electric vehicles versus the grid, is the same technology we use to manage batteries in the general grid balancing. And this is the reason, for instance, because of the mobility technology is managing also the energy sector, is starting to manage also the energy sector more and more. Also, if a lot of time you do not have mobility issues in the energy sector. And this process of technological convergence towards the energy aspect, due to the climate and environmental emergencies, has another important effect. In the past, dozens of years ago, the unit of business was connected to the weight. If you bought a big vehicle usually was more expensive than a small vehicle. Then you went in a business as a service, where the cost of the service was connected on the time you use the service. But now we are going versus business models that are connected about the emissions, about the carbon footprint of the service you use. And for instance, this is an example, is a real example based on MOVENS technology, where you have in this case we have a local transportation authority, and the users of the bus, they have a smartphone application, they do reservation with that. So there is the full management of vehicles and so on. But there is also all the management of the air quality parameters, starting from emissions of the vehicle, so particulate PM10, PM2.5, but also the CO2, the CO2 density in the air, outside and inside the vehicle. Because in Europe, for instance, they are starting to study new regulations connected to the air quality. So you can have limitation inside the public transportation connected to the air quality. When we had the pandemic, in a lot of countries, there was a limitation, usually 50% of people that can enter a vehicle. But we are going versus a new regulation where the limitation is determined, is fixed by the air quality. And also the taxation, the financing of these companies will be connected on their emissions. All of this process is is a difficult process, because we have the problem of fragmentation. By a technological point of view, we have dozens and dozens of thousands of different solutions managing energy, transportation, mobility, insurance, health. we have a lot of different solutions, but to manage this process of integration towards the energy asset, towards the measurement of the carbon footprint, we have the problem that all the solutions we have are not able to speak together. So in order to solve this problem, this fragmentation problem, we build up MOVENS, this platform that is the basement of all the services under, we can say, a smart city. And the main feature of MOVENS are three. The first feature is that it is completely designed for integration, following with the vision of MOBI. It's MOVENS is completely open source and adopts only standards, only technological standards, standards defined with MOBI, and standards defined with MOBI together with regulators, for instance, European Commission for Europe. And this is MOVENS, an IoT platform with these three main features. So, what do we have now? MOVENS, we can, because of it is made for integration, we can define it as an everything to everything platform. And currently, we have a lot of solutions of vertical solution on the market based on MOVENS. What is very important, that when you have a solution, for instance, about public transportation, coaches, buses, this solution, because of it is based on MOVENS, is able to talk and to negotiate with other solutions that, for instance, are in the electricity distribution. And for instance, this is a solution with directly with the OEM cloud for the monitoring of all the batteries of the battery data. In this case, is a Nissan Leaf, and here you can see all the specific data of every single cell of the battery of the battery of the Nissan Leaf. This is very important, not only for the battery, but because this battery of this vehicle has a specific role, for example, in energy communities, in the management of energy with a building, and so on. And there are solutions. This is a solution for coaches. This is for trucks. Here, in this case, we are already connected. MOVENS is already connected with some trucks makers. In this case, you can see here DAF vehicles, Renault trucks that are automatically connected with MOVENS without installing any box. So we are talking about connected trucks, and we have a lot of other solutions. This is, for example, the monitoring of the data through the Chain 2 standard about coming from all the meters that are in every home. And we have already an integration with a full smart city platform that is developed by Mooney AI. It is an Hong Kong, a Chinese Israel company. And they use MOVENS as the foundation layer for the collection of the data, and then they develop all the services for the smart city. There are also already solutions at the infrastructure point of view. For example, DBA Group that is a company that develops solutions for the full management of ports, coming from the management of ships entering the port, containers coming from the ships in the port, containers coming from the port to the trains to exit the port. All the full solution, the port solution developed by DBA Group, is integrated with MOVENS for the collection of the data from the field in a standardized way and in a continuous evolving standards following the new regulations. And new regulations are evolving very fast, especially in the energy field. And I can continue with other example, but the main concept of MOVENS is that MOVENS is the foundation layer for the collection of the data, totally open source, totally following the standards and the new regulations, in order to make the verticals that manages specific market segments to be able to communicate between them and to have an integrate solution. And so this is MOVENS. Now I let Tommaso explain what is Wefox.
Okay, thank you, Domenico. It's a pleasure to be here and with our friends Henshin, and to be able to be on the stage. And as I've been introduced, I had partnerships at Wefox. And let me go back a little in history. Insurance, as we all know, is a very old, extremely old business, and it has not yet been impacted by technology. So this stage is quite useful for all of us. And actually, things in the history have gotten worse. In some ways, we have a foundation on the history of insurance that is one of the most complete in the world. It's sitting in Milan right now. And in the records, we have examples of policies that were done 150 years ago that were written in one page, and now the same policy in 2022, it's the same coverages, around the same coverages are written in 150 pages. So things are getting longer and more difficult. And so what we are trying is to create technology to update insurance in the 21st century. And we will see how we do this in this brief moment I have with you, and the results that we have reached, and so that to be able to provide for all of us riding our cars, to have competitive and personalized insurance, and also this could also bring and will bring actually information on energy use and consumption. Reaching also home and office insurance also. So here we see in this first slide, we see our proposition. So we are a platform. We're not just a platform, and we're not just an insurer. And we're fortunate enough, Wefox is fortunate enough to have been born recently in 2015. So we have basically digitalized the whole insurance ecosystem, and this permits us having a very advanced technology platform to be able to convey embedded insurance reading data, insurance reading embedded telematics of vehicles and of energy consumption also in houses, in homes and offices. So the next slide. So these systems basically are natively connected. This means that we can deliver at lower cost, better insurance, basically connected with data provided by vehicles or data provided by any IoT system. For the examples that we made here also is the energy meters. So this is where we are, this is where we sit, and we convey basically insurance to the financial institutions, OEMs, and utilities, as we will see in the next slides. So the next slide, very briefly, this is just our funding story. We reached now an evaluation of around 4.5 billion. Next slide. We're a fast-growing company. We have a strong presence in the affinity arena with more than 4 million policies made, and we have around €500 million turnover in this arena. Next slide. You see our presence here in Europe and our expansions that we have in timeline, and we're also already looking at Asia and the US. So next slide. So as I was saying, Wefox is not just an insurance company, it's not just a distribution company. It's a platform that connects insurance and distributors, leveraging technology and data, as we will see. So next slide. Here we see the services that we can do. It's also insurance engineering, and of course the platform sits in the middle, and also operational services, MGA services, to provide an end-to-end solution to our partners. Next slide. I'll go quickly through the slides so we have more time to use cases later on with Manja Capra. So here we have a brief explanation on the MGA services. So it's from policy management to of course, claim service. Next slide. This gives us some customer experience and customer evaluations with Trustpilot. 5 is the maximum. And basically we test our capabilities, especially on the concrete part of insurance, so with the claims. So this arena is reached through the claims customer experience. Next slide. So we connect basically dots between market offering and innovative, in the case of mobility, innovative pay per drive that uses technology to make better prices. We have an ADAS underwriting scheme that can assess ADAS with both severity and frequency on each ADAS, on each model of vehicle, to permit, of course, better MTPL and better comprehensive coverages. When we buy a car, we've all seen that nobody really can convey concretely the importance of the ADAS on the insurance solutions that are provided to clients in dealers. And this is an example. And so being able to have this data readily available can enhance the OEM in selling models that are more advanced, that have more advanced ADAS, and also explaining to the clients why these advanced driving assistance systems can convey more safety in driving, and so at the end, better insurance at lower cost. So next slide. With our ecosystems, with our platforms, we're not only attached, or we cannot only convey insurance through our partners at the point of sale. So at what we call embedded insurance is really being able to convey insurance exactly when it's needed, but we can also convey insurance to all the customers in different touch points that they have with our partners OEMs. So it's not only, for example, when you buy a vehicle, in the case of mobility, when you buy a vehicle at dealerships that insurance is conveyed, but also in many other occasions throughout the life cycle of the clients. Next slide. So we have a scalable platform with automated processes to reach all of the clients. We have experience in multiplying insurance revenues by 3. We had around 3 cases where we've really increased volumes by a multiplication factor of 3. Central product core digital platforms are flexible for fast insurance setup of campaigns using embedded telematics, and this results in lower combined ratios, better prices, and more revenue, basically. Next slide. So this is a mobility hub. We have also platforms that are they can convey through the Wefox platforms different services, whether that be help in making quotations, or at point of sale, whether that be shops of utilities, or whether that be dealers for OEMs. And Telematics Hub reaches the data from IoT, whether that be as we will see later, embedded telematics or after-sales devices, or mobility energy meters. The examples were made here. And dynamic subscription is basically in real time modifying prices based on assumptions that we can look at together. That be penetration of finance, for example, in the sales of vehicles, or whether that be penetration of insurance compared to finance and compared to the sales of vehicles. And subscription is, of course, extremely important. Now vehicles are given in in a monthly subscription. So insurance, of course, must be conveyed in the same manner. And also inside the utility arena, in the same manner, inside buildings of utilities. And claims management, we've talked about it before, and CRM also is a very important moment where we can help reach clients. And then just the last few slides, this is telematics hub that shows that we can basically read also with the help of the Henshin as our partners. We can read OEM after sales devices, vehicle embedded, of course, telematics after sales, not OEM, but after sales devices in the market, recharge stations, and of course ADAS to convey insurance, whether it be through kilowatt consumption for energy or mileage, or driving behavior, distracted behavior, or again reading ADAS usage when driving. And that can, of course, give the ability to give cash back to clients. We will see a couple of slides in the use cases of that, and other services, basically. And next slide. These are some of our partners, and especially concentrating in the speech in the mobility. And next slide. This is some examples of businesses that we've run with OEMs and with the portfolio, and what that can mean basically as commissions to our partners, which is, of course, a very important part of the revenue stream, especially of the banks, financial banks, captive of the OEMs that we serve. So with the next slide, I will give back the speech to Domenico and on some use cases, and I will come back to you with some interesting use cases from Wefox.
Okay, thank you, Tommaso. So I enter in the use cases by a technical point of view. So we exchange data from the field and toward Wefox in many different ways. And in some cases, we have a direct bus connection via Kafka connection. In some cases, directly we have a communication through MQTT. And but the most important concept is the API. We have the concept of asset. And for instance, Wefox system call this single API of the asset, and then there is the asset can be a vehicle, can be a home energy meter. So the API is the same. You define, you ask for the asset, definition of the asset, identification, vehicle identification number, or pod if it's an energy meter. And then what do you want? I don't know, energy consumption in the last 7 days, in the last week, in the last day, in the last month. And then with this data, then Wefox can manage its business. And in the specific case, we provide to Wefox the data coming from vehicles, both connected vehicles, so through directly the clouds of the OEMs, and both coming from aftermarket telematics box that are on the vehicle, for instance, Teltonica, Texa, Octo Telematics. And at the same time, we provide on the energy field the data coming from the meters, from the energy meters in the buildings, and we provide also the AI system, the digital system that is able to deconvolve the data. And so without installing any kind of smart meter, we can have all the specific data of the dishwasher, of the fridge, and of every energy element inside the home. So I give
so back to me,
to Tommaso.
Domenico, thank you. So yeah, and the next slide.
Yes.
So yeah. So here we see, as Domenico was saying, we see as subscription. This is one of the big assets, of course, that we convey. And of course, in loan, in financing, things can be different because policies can be conveyed in other manners throughout the finance. But subscription, of course, is extremely important, especially when we look at energy consumption, data-driven, real time, and using technology. So next slide. So this is, just a slide just to put us back in the car technologies. It's interesting. We all would like cars to prevent accidents, but it's really interesting to see that on the top of the list, what clients want inside this arena, it's infotainment. So still, we have to really show clients that show all of us that ADAS are really important also in conveying insurance, because insurance is assessing risk. So if insurance is not the first one that really conveys the difference between these risk avoidance systems, clients will continue to ask for infotainment. So next slide. Here we see vehicle as a service. This is one of the industry mantras, strategies, and of course, insurance must follow as a service. And I've said all of this already. So insurance but simple, this is one of our main drivers, Wefox. Next slide. So these slides basically show that technologies don't easily convey correctly at next slide at a cheap with cheap solutions insurance. So if you see next slide, Domenico. Yeah, so see here, you see that it's inefficient, it's expensive. When you want to convey one insurance to dealers, then you must change it to top dealers, and then maybe you go to a different country, or maybe you embed insurance inside the OEM, inside the cars, and then inside the finance, and then maybe you go direct because the car is being sold direct, so you need to be there. So all of this is normally it's the systems in place are incompatible with all of this to be made easy. So next slide. This is where the Wefox platform basically comes in, delivering all these capabilities end to end, and which can be entered in any arena, in any way, because all of the building blocks talk to each other through APIs, also inside the platforms. So whether that be an insurer that says, okay, yeah, but I already have 30% of this, and I would like to enter only in the offer stage, and then the quoting stage I keep it myself, etc., etc. These platforms can be used also in that way, in a very flexible manner. So next slide. So we can configure basically any product inside this platform to enable distribution in any distribution channel, as I was saying. Next slide. This shows some interesting aspects of building blocks. So you see here the ADAS in the car and the driver insurance, for example. So once we make the building block ADAS, then that building block can be used in different policies, without having to reprogram anything. So just by drag and drop, you drop it in the arena of the driver insurance, and automatically will connect. And this is how the Wefox platform works. And so on the top, you see the car, reading ADAS and embedded technologies, and driver insurance. So the house, reading the energy meter. So next slide. This is all the APIs, of course, we're talking about, to be able to be read, in all the channels. Next slide. And this is interesting because it shows that underwriting really is going already towards vehicle safety and less on traditional scoring. And vehicles, will eventually be able to reach self-autonomous driving for all of us. And so at that stage, insurance will look at how these vehicles will drive and not how young we are or other aspects of male, female, etc., and how other aspects that maybe can make a difference, and or our jobs, what kind of jobs we have, how we drive the car and where. And so this, of course, can be empowered already through technology. Next slide. To be able to to bring us in an arena where it's there's less competition, with possibility to give cashback. I will give you an example of cashback in a couple of slides. Next slide. So this is again this is what we can basically convey with pay as you drive. Interesting also in kilowatts. We can make it on liters. When you make a full gas tank, fuel tank, or how you drive. Gift cards also is an arena which is interesting through technologies. Next slide. Here is an example of cashback. So one of the interesting aspects of conveying insurance, for example, through dealers or through channels, is that policies should be simple and with simple pricing to be able to be sold like an accessory of the car. So it's one of the possibilities is to convey cashbacks to the clients once we read the embedded technologies and we use ADAS underwriting. And these cashbacks, this is an example, of course, can be used as an example or inside the ecosystem of the OEM or the utility, for example. And that can be for insurance renewals inside this ecosystem, or just to be spent at dealers or at the repair shops of the OEM. So it's like an OEM check to be spent inside the OEM arena, whether that be insurance or whether that be finance or whether that be repair shops. So next slide. These are very quickly just some examples. So this is motor third-party liability with cashback if you drive well or if you drive less. Next slide. This is, of course, the same, also collision or casco coverage, comprehensive coverage with cashback again. And next slide. This is an example of giving service centers for free, for example, inside. And this is an example of a Citroen. These are just examples we made. And so a Citroen could be sold, for example, with 1,000 kilometers or service centers for free in case there is an accident and the client is at fault or partially at fault and nobody is paying for his damages. Next slide. The same can be done, of course, with electric vehicles. This is a Peugeot 208, for example, with kilowatt. The first 200 kilowatts, you're covered for free. And next slide. And again, this is empowering ADAS. So again, this is an example, of course. We're so proud of our ADAS that we will give you, another car in case of total damage, because we're so sure that will not happen, that we can permit ourselves to give this storytelling. Next slide. This is the last one. And so home or office. I'm sorry I spoke a lot about vehicles, but of course the arena of home and utilities, and to be able to convey more personalized home or office for SMEs insurance, of course, Here we see, of course, IoT, we see MOVENS, of course, as platform. We see apps. Again, we might see vehicles inside these homes or offices. And and this, of course, can give us, of course, warranty, business interruption, carbon footprint, mobility, insurance, through reading all this data, especially to innovate insurance. And it's not only a question of being more competitive, more personalized, it's also being innovative for the clients. So this is the last slide now. Myself and Domenico, of course, so this is our emails where you can reach us if you have questions. And we're, of course, available now for questions. And we're, of course, also available if you want by email to answer any questions that you might have. So Domenico, we're back and forth.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you so much, guys. Does anybody have any questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or if you'd prefer, you can type them into the chat and I'll read them aloud. Any questions going once? Going twice?
It's a quiet audience.
Oh, go ahead.
It's a quiet audience, I was saying.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay, yeah.
Real quick, if you could, you're going to make these slides available to me to send out just so that we can make sure everybody got that contact information in case people have some questions, maybe after a few minutes to think.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Alrighty then.
If we have like a couple of minutes still, just 3 more minutes. It's interesting hearing Domenico, the vehicle to grid aspect. Domenico, if you want to talk a little bit about that, that's interesting. It's a project that Henshin is working on.
Yes. Consider the vehicle to grid. Currently, the most important topic, in my experience, is the role of the vehicle inside energy communities, because all the energy problems, also problems coming from the war in Ukraine, not only connected to the disaster of the climate, but also energy problems coming from the war. In all Europe, they are creating a strong push versus the energy communities, and electric vehicles. And so the topic of vehicle to grid is very hot, is very important. The main problem is that there are a lot of pilot or POC made by a lot from energy companies, some also by car maker, OEM. And the problem are that not all the electric vehicles are able to manage vehicle to grid, but only vehicle one grid, so only monodirectional communication, energy communication, because the charger of the vehicle is not a bidirectional charger. And on the other side, we have the problem that charging points, a lot of time, they are not easily manageable. Because, for instance, in this process of electrification, if you have a big corporate, and maybe you are a big corporate, and in your building there are 10,000 of people, and you have the company, the corporate vehicles. In the process of electrification, you are substituting your thermic vehicle with electric vehicle, and maybe you have 500 of electric vehicle. And so now you have the problem not only to have 500 electric vehicles, but to have also hundreds of charging points. But if you have 100 of charging points and you connect 100 of electric vehicles to the charging points, immediately you have the collapse of your energy system and you have the blackout in your building, in your corporate building. So you have to manage in a good way. So you have to put solar cells, photovoltaic implants in the parking place. You have to manage in order to have a storage system to get the energy during the day. You need a flexible management system. You have to manage in order to manage all the charging to the electric vehicles in different ways. So all of these topics are very complex because by technological point of view, not always the electric vehicles are currently able to manage the vehicle to grid, only vehicle one grid, and not all the charging points are able to be managed in an easy way. And now there are the new charging points coming to the market are following the standard OCPP 1.6 or OCPP 2.0. And so it is easier to manage all of that. But generally speaking, the vehicle to grid, particularly in Europe, is a very difficult topic.
Yeah, very interesting. Extremely interesting for me, at least.
Yeah.
Hi, yeah, this is Carl Clark. If you can hear me, I thought I would just chime in. I've been sitting and listening. I'm at one of the engineers at Ford Motor Company, and we do have bidirectional power on our electric vehicles, where those vehicles can be used to, let's say, power your home, your residential home. And in the case of a power outage, we can flip the switch and run the power the other direction. We also, obviously at Ford, we're moving very quickly to electric vehicles in terms of our product mix, away from gas into electric vehicles. So that's actually happening. Based on the COVID-19, a lot of people are now working remotely. We don't have the problem that you described, at least not yet, of all of the vehicles being at the office and wanting to charge. When I think about how our situation is today, we have several charging stations at our facility, but it's a small number relative to the number of parking spots that we have. And that's not my particular area of expertise of managing that grid. But I can see in the future that someone does have to be thinking about this. And just a little bit curious, you know, what the Ford plan is, what we're doing. But I will say, I am one of the innovation leads within Ford Motor Company. So we, you know, the innovation teams, we're always thinking about all kinds of things that we need to look out for. And I will say, as we move to electric vehicles, the idea, I've had conversations with colleagues about the opportunities of helping to manage the power grid with all of these mobile power plants that we have on the road, and the, you know, just the cost for charging during peak and off-peak hours, and how we can help balance the load with all of the power plants. So that is things that people are talking about. And I would just add that I've just been sitting here listening, because it's a lot to take in as an innovation person myself. I just listen and think, right? I don't have any answers, just listening. And I would just thank the team for sharing, you know, for sharing what you guys are sharing today. So I appreciate it.
And considering your observation, your comments, your consideration, and you have to consider that, for instance, we have a very big issue with local transportation, because local transportation, public transportation, governments are pressing for electrification. So buses and coaches are going electric, but obviously they can be charged only during night, because during day they are making their service. And during night, they must charge in their deposit that usually are in strange places outside or in the suburbs of the city. And usually the grid system, the grid network is not able, has not enough power to give the energy to charging points in the suburbs of the city to recharge a series of big buses. So they have to build up all the energy system, and solar cells and storage systems in order to use the energy they collect during the day to charge during the night. And so these points become the center of the energy communities. So people living near the deposit of buses are the new energy communities. And so there are strange investment because they are receiving money by the government, from the government, to buy new electric buses, but they have to use this money not only for the electric buses, but also to set up the energy community infrastructure.
Yeah. On just a note, we're now attaching our systems to the Ford autonomic transportation mobility cloud to be able to convey cashback to your clients. So I don't know if that can be of interest to you. We're currently doing that right now.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carl.
Sure.
Okay. They say there is a demand, a question in the chat.
Yes, I'll read aloud Jeff's message here. Regarding the electrical grid topic, it will be important to assess the system-wide demands on the existing energy infrastructure with the increased adoption of EVs. He also wrote, worth including in the regional analysis is that transportation infrastructure in North America and Europe have different characteristics. Much more of a train-connected long-haul robust network in the US, or sorry, in Europe, and not so much in the US. This is very unfortunately true. And it has to span much greater distances as well.
Yeah. My comment on this question is that I agree completely with this consideration. And in fact, for instance, in Europe, about electric grid, about all the countries are connected between them the national grid. And at the European level, it has been developed a global grid system that is called EquiG, totally open source, that manages in a full way all the specific grids of every single country, because it is fundamental to have a full integration. In order to manage local differentiation, local specific topics, you need a global integration in order to have the flexibility at a local level. And MOVENS now is connecting, we are working to connect MOVENS with EquiG, that is the European totally open source based on blockchain infrastructure management system of all the European grids. And by the way, it has been very important in the disconnection in the Ukraine and Russia war. In the beginning, Ukraine grid was connected to the Russia grid. And in few days, the Ukraine grid was disconnected from the Russia grid and it was connected to the European grid. There is another question, so if this webinar will be available also in the following days. I think it has been recorded and it will be published also the video.
Yeah, Domenico, you said it. And it's actually perfect because we're coming up at the top of the hour. Yes, Jeff, we will be making this lecture recording available on our website. It should be up probably by tomorrow. So just go on to dlt.mobi, check out our community lectures page, and you should see this here. And it looks like we're about at the top of the hour. So we can probably go ahead and close it out here. Thanks so much to Domenico and Tommaso for your presentation. Thank you so much to the audience for coming out today and joining us. And we look forward to all that you guys will do, and we look forward to everybody joining us again for our next lecture. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Pleasure to everybody.
You too. Ciao. Bye.
Cheers all.
Ciao. Bye-bye.